أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم إلى يوم الدين. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. Brothers and sisters, it is a pleasure being here at Yasin and being able to present for you, even though it is online, being at your service and presenting some of the letters of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. And today we're going to be talking about his letter to the governor of Mecca. We said that in these letters we're going to get life lessons, we're going to learn more about Imam Hussein alayhi salam, and it's going to be an encouragement for us to become better people, inshallah. One of the questions that I have for you before we start is what is the most probably unique quality of Imam Hussein and his companions? From all the different qualities and attributes that the best of the companions have, which are the companions of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, what quality did they have? What quality did they share? I want you to think about this. What was different with the companions of Imam Hussein with, maybe you could say, other companions? One thing that comes to my humble mind is that Imam Hussein alayhi salam and his companions were outnumbered. By odds of they were 72, they were about 100, and the enemy was about 10,000, 30,000. So because of this extreme difference when it comes to number, the companions of Imam Hussein had to have one quality that, we rarely see in battles and history and when we study history, and that is they had the quality of being fearless. They did not fear the creation of God. They did not fear death because they knew they were outnumbered. They knew at the end this path would lead them to martyrdom alongside Imam Hussein alayhi salam. They knew this. As you see the night of Ashura, you see the speech of the companions saying, if you burn me down multiple times, we will not leave you, Hussein alayhi salam. So in my humble opinion, one of the most outstanding merits of the companions of Imam Hussein alayhi salam is they were courageous. They didn't fear. They were willing to sacrifice. And that is what, Karbala is all about. It is a sacrifice. It is about these companions that Imam Hussein alayhi salam turned off the light for them, turned off the fire for them. They could have went, but instead they chose to die with Imam Hussein. So when we talk about this quality, we have to see that in ourselves too. Do we have fear? Are we fearful people? We are learning from Imam Hussein alayhi salam, and one of the great lessons of Karbala is not to be afraid, not to have fear. Because those that are of the awliya of God, those that are of the friends of God, la khawfun alayhim, they don't have fear. So therefore, when you see this letter that the governor of Mecca gives, and Abdullah ibn Ja'far al-Tayyar, which was the husband of Lady Zainab alayhi salam, the father of Aun and Muhammad, who were martyred in Karbala, he himself, Abdullah ibn Ja'far, for whatever reason, we have traditions from the Imams praising him, but for whatever reason, Allah knows, he did not go and participate in the battle of Karbala. He was not in Ashura, but instead, he sent his sons, Aun and Muhammad, and instead he sent his wife, Lady Zainab. So therefore, we see that he goes and gets a letter because of the powerful position that Abdullah ibn Ja'far had. Abdullah ibn Ja'far was a very rich person. He was actually one of the first, they say, Muslim children, because his father, Ja'far Tayyar, migrated to modern-day Ethiopia in Hijrah. So he was one of those that was born in Ethiopia. He was born in Africa. And he pledged allegiance to the Prophet when he was a child. And he became a companion of Imam Ali later on. He participated in the Battle of Jamal. He participated in the Battle of Siffin. And for whatever reason, he was not in the Battle of Karbala. He accompanied Imam Hassan alayhi salam, and he was a companion. And you see that one of the reasons, actually, they say that he becomes so wealthy is from the dua of the Prophet. It's attributed to him that while he was a child, he would do business. And the Prophet of Islam made this dua about Abdullah ibn Ja'far, Allahumma barik lahu fi safqati yamineh, that God give him blessings. And they say after this dua of the Holy Prophet, Abdullah ibn Ja'far never made a business transaction unless it was profitable. And you see his generosity and how he helped so many people that they call him, and one of the titles that they have is Bahrul Jud, the sea of generosity. And he wanted to help Imam Hussein alayhi salam. And you see that he is very obedient with all his wealth, with all of his political power that he has. When they come to ask for marriage for his daughter, very interesting, he is the father. A father has right over his daughter. He says in the tradition, Inna amra nisa'ina ila al-Hasan ibn Ali alayhi salam. The position, the affair of our daughters, of our women, are in the hands of the infallible Imam. Imam Hassan alayhi salam was the infallible Imam. Imam Hassan knows. This is his own daughter, but he says Imam Hassan knows. He has to approve. So you see that he cares for Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. You see that his mother is Asma bint Umays. And you see that, for example, his father is Ja'far al-Tayyar, martyred in the Battle of Mu'tah, martyred in Jordan, present-day Jordan. He has a shrine. So from such a lineage, his Asma was a companion of Lady Fatima, his mother. Asma was one of those that was present in the funeral of Lady Fatima alayhi salam. So therefore, he goes and gets a letter of protection. What these letters of aman, or these letters of protection is, it was genuine, and people would follow this, is that when you get this letter, you cannot ever go against it. It is a letter of protection. So with this, Imam Hussein alayhi salam should be in protection, right? But Imam Hussein alayhi salam answers in his letter about the letter of the governor of Mecca, and says this, and this is what we're going to be talking about tonight. وَقَدْ دَعَوْتُ إِلَى الْأَمَانِ وَالْبِرِّ وَالصِّلَةِ, that you have called upon protection and good, righteousness and connection, you can say your family. So you have called upon protection for me. Listen to our master's response. فَخَيْرُ الْأَمَانِ أَمَانُ اللَّهِ, but the best protection is the protection of God. So Imam Hussein alayhi salam is talking about being protected by God, and does not want the protection of the creation of God. He wants the protection of God. وَلَنْ يُؤْمَنْ اللَّهُ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ مَنْ لَمْ يَخِفْهُ فِي الدُّنْيَا. And never is one protected from God in the day of judgment unless he feared him in this world. So Imam Hussein alayhi salam is saying that I don't need your protection. I want the protection of God, and I want the protection of God in the hereafter. And whoever fears God in this world will get the protection of God in the hereafter. فَنَسْأَلُ اللَّهِ مَخَافَةً فِي الدُّنْيَا تُوجِبْ لَنَا أَمَانَهُ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. And we ask from God his fear in this world, so that we can attain his protection on the day of judgment. So very interesting, Imam Hussein alayhi salam can be assassinated in Mecca. He can be assassinated wherever he is. He will be martyred. And he is not looking for the protection of people. And when he gets an aman, a letter of aman, a letter of security, he talks about security of the hereafter. He doesn't talk about security of this world. And he talks about fearing God in this world. If you want salvation, if you want protection, fear God in this world. So what do we understand from this beautiful letter that is attributed to Imam Hussein alayhi salam? We understand that the importance of fearing God. And we say that the most important quality, we could say, that is, manifests itself, one of the most important qualities, because my knowledge is limited, is the fact that Imam Hussein alayhi salam and his companions didn't fear anybody but God. And that is what led them to charge into the battlefield. At the end, Imam Hussein alayhi salam, when he lost his companions, when he lost his family members, when he loses his sons, there's one time that he is all alone. He is wahid. He's severely alone. That is when it's just him and his family members in the camp. It is just him. And there's a time when he will have to rush towards this, these waves of people and not be afraid at all. It's very hard for us to imagine that. Some of us, when we just want to get one injection, we run away. Myself, when I was a child, they would try to give me an injection. I would have to chase me. From this room, I'd run to another room. So imagine you're running towards an ocean, a sea of arrows and axes, or arrows and lances and spears and swords and daggers, and you do not have fear. You do not have fear, and yet you are providing courage for your followers. So Imam Hussein alayhi salam is a symbol for us that man can become so powerful, man can become so strong, man can become so courageous that fear does not run into their heart. Fear is not allowed for them. Because we said in the Quran, the awliya of God don't have fear. One of the problems that we do have, brothers and sisters and myself, and maybe we can even say it's a type of sickness, and something that we teach our children, unfortunately, is we teach them to be afraid of the creation. We don't teach them to be afraid of God. And being fearful is not something that is good. Being feared of creation, I'm not saying to be a reckless person, because everything has limits in this world. And having too much courage, as we have in hadith from Imam Hassan Askari, I believe, that a person becomes foolhardy. We don't want that. I'm not saying not to wear your seatbelt. I'm not saying, not to provide safety for yourself, or tell your children, when they have a bicycle, not to have a helmet, trusting God. No. We still understand that there are two types of factors in this world, the material factors and the spiritual, but we understand that Allah is our Mawla, and those that believe, they have a Mawla, they have a protector, they have a guardian, and that anything that happens in this world is by the permission of God, that His Lordship and His Rububiyyat means that He is the only effective source of power, or He is the only effective being in this world. So why do we teach ourselves? Why do we promote fear? And why do we always talk about it and like to scare each other? Why don't we view fear as a disease? If a person is afraid, they will never learn anything. They'll never learn sports. If a person's afraid of the water all the time, they'll never learn how to swim. If a person's afraid, they'll never learn how to ride a bike and to take off those training wheels, a child. So there are things that we have to teach our kids. Yes, you have to teach them, be careful of cars, that's being careful is different than being fearful. And sometimes we teach this bad behavior to our children, and our children become very fearful, and which isn't good. So in the same world, in the business world, we could say, if a person is always afraid to start their own business, afraid to, implement that business plan that they had, afraid to invest money, they will get nowhere. So fear is hampering us in this world. Fear is hampering us in the hereafter, because we see that fear is not something good. Fear of God is good, but it has been opposite now. People do not fear from God. You see, like Umar ibn Sa'd, they say that he in the books it says, or in the book it says, that he closed down water to Imam Hussein alayhi salam. And they came to him, they're saying, you're cutting down water and prohibiting water, that animals drink from water, pigs drink from water, and you're prohibiting this from the children of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. You're prohibiting water from him. Instead, he answered that he is promised the government of Ray. So he doesn't have fear of God, Umar ibn Sa'd, because he is into the world, he is into the dunya. But the opposite, you see, Lady Zainab alayhi salam, a lady, she just lost 2 children, she just lost 2 brothers. She was with the family of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, protecting them. And coming in front of Yazid, Yazid was powerful. He had a very vast empire at that time. And coming in front of him and humiliating Yazid, talking about his lineage of how he goes back to Hind, the one that ate the liver, going back to Hind, and humiliating Yazid, even though he was the caliph. Why? How did she become so strong? She was an asir, she was a captive, but in reality, she was an amir, she was a commander, Zainab. Why? Because she didn't have fear. She didn't have anything to lose. She had zuhd, asceticism. She disdained from the world. There's nothing for them to take away from her. Once you reach such a position that there's nothing to lose, that this world, as Imam Hussein will talk about one of the letters of Imam Hussein, as if this world is just an illusion, as if this world was never meant, never created, never was. And then the real reality is the hereafter. Once you believe this, you realize and you believe in the power of God, you become the strongest of people. Nobody can stop you anymore. You're fighting against someone that is not afraid. It's very difficult. Fighting against someone that has nothing to lose, that they believe that whatever happens is from God. So therefore, tonight we're going to be talking about fear and understanding that one of the most distinguishing traits of Imam Hussein's companions was that they were fearless. When we look at verses in the Quran, how does God teach us in the Holy Quran not to be afraid? You see, the Quran, when you read verses of the Quran, it is a solution. The Quran is a shifa lin-nas, is a cure for people. It cures these diseases. When a person is always afraid, they're going to be anxious. They're always going to have stress. They're not going to be relaxed. They're not going to be able to remember God, to have, silence and to have calmness. First of all, we understand that we are not allowed to cause fear to others. If you look at the narrations, human beings in Islam are not allowed, for friends and brothers and good people, they're not allowed to scare each other. And he says, one of the worst creation are those creation that they frighten people with their tongues. People are afraid of them. You see people, you come into a gathering, a family gathering, friendly gathering, and immediately they'll make fun of someone. They'll say something about them. They'll question them in a way, and people are afraid. They don't want to be around that person, and because that person is scared. We do not have permission to scare people. We do not have permission to frighten people with our tongues, with our hands, or as we have in some of the rulings about Muharram, to scare people with swords and to frighten them. We're not allowed to scare people. Yes, there are traditions that when Imam Zaman comes, that fear will be from God, and God will guide him, will help him and aid him with fear, just how the Prophet of Islam, he was aided by fear and rope. That the enemies did fear the Prophet of Islam because it is, self-defense. He's defending. If you have in the traditions from Imam Mahdi that when he travels, that fear will travel 1 month before him. So, but we are not allowed to cause anybody fear. So how does the Quran handle this question, of teaching us only to fear God? First of all, one of the most important things that we fear, when you look at verses that, talks about aiding the Prophet of Islam, coming to his aid, and those that did not want to come to his aid, or those that run away from the battlefield. Let's look at, one of these verses that talks about, a way for us to lose fear. That is the fear of death. أَلَمْ تَرَ إِلَى الَّذِينَ قِيلَ لَهُمْ كُفُّوا أَيْدِيَكُمْ وَأَقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَآتُوا الزَّكَاةَ فَلَمَّا كُتِبَ عليهم القتال إذا فريق منهم يخشون الناس كخشية الله أو أشد خشية. You look at 477. Have you not seen those who were told, restrain your hands from fighting and establish prayer and give zakat? Pray, Allahu Akbar, pray, give zakat. Farm, and give zakat, shovel. You don't need to fight. Don't use that shovel against anybody, just shovel. Have you not seen them? But then when fighting was ordained for them, sometimes fighting is ordained, at once a party of them feared men as they fear Allah. Allah should be feared, obviously, because the power of God, if you put, na'udhu billah, imagine right now, you just put, the most scariest thing you can think of. I don't know, is it a snake? Is it a mouse? I don't know, the most scariest thing you can think of. You put it there, and then you put God next to it. Which one are you going to be more afraid of? The creation or the creator of that? So they fear people, they fear creation as if they fear God, or even greater than God. And that's the stage we're at right now, how society is. We fear everything right now, but God. We have fear of everything. One of the worst fears is people have right now is losing their phone, being disconnected from their phone for 5 minutes. It's a fear. It might cause a heart attack for them. So fear men as they fear Allah, or even greater. And then they say, very interesting, the next verse that comes afterwards, أَيْنَمَا تَكُونُوا يُدْرِككُمْ الْمَوْتُ وَلَوْ كُنْتُمْ فِي بُرُوجٍ مُشَيَّدَةٍ. Wherever you may be, death will overtake you, even it should be within the towers of lofty construction. So very beautifully in this verse in the Holy Quran, 477, and then later on 478. You can write this down, put it somewhere, and just a reminder for us that Allah is addressing a group of people that fighting and protecting the Prophet of Islam is ordained for them. But they are afraid, and they want to just pray, and they want to give zakah. And then the verse following says, wherever you may be, death will overtake you. It doesn't matter, basically the Quran is saying death is not in your hands. That's one solution that the Quran talks about death is not in your hands. Wherever you shall be, even within towers of lofty construction, heart attack, stroke, tripping down from that lofty construction and falling down, whatever. A disease comes and gets you there, whatever. But so one of the things that we understand as Muslims from this verse is that death is not in our hands. So therefore, if death is not in my hand, why am I afraid? And even other verses, it talks about you can't postpone death. You can't even make it come earlier. Like it's 1661. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. فإذا جاء أجلهم لا يستأخرون ساعة ولا يستقدمون. And when their term has come, they will not remain behind in an hour nor will they precede it. When their ajal comes, you cannot be behind it, you cannot do ta'khir of it, you cannot delay it, and you cannot make it proceed. You cannot change that ajal, that final judgment of our death. Bada can happen. We talk about this in theology. There can be a taqdeer, and then there can be a qada. There can be a taqdeer, something that is determined, something that's predetermined for you, yes. But then there's a final decree, final decree that doesn't change anymore. When that final decree comes, there's nothing you can do. You can't make it come forward, and you can't make it come late. So Allah is teaching us one thing, that death is not in our hands. So the companions of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, when they understand this important fact, that even if they're in lofty towers, even if they try to, you cannot make death come forward or death come late. When you see verses about shaitan, one of the things that shaitan does is, what is it? What is one of the different activities that shaitan does? One is that he causes fear. Ya'idukum, he threatens you of faqr, of fear, of poverty. Shaitan warns you and makes you afraid of poverty. So you see, again, that's one of the actions of shaitan. He causes fear. But then you see verses in the Quran very beautifully, that in these verses you see that Allah gives rizq, Allah provides. So you shouldn't have fear of death, that death will eventually come to you, that death cannot be changed. Two, why do you have fear of poverty when Allah provides for you? زُيِّنَ لِلَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا الحياة الدنيا ويسخرون من الذين آمنوا والذين اتقوا فوقهم يوم القيامة. Beautified for those who disbelieve in the life of this world, and they ridicule those who believe. But those who fear God, those that have taqwa, are above them on the day of judgment. So beautified for the disbelievers is this world in the hereafter, and they make fun of the believers. وَاللَّهُ يَرْزُقُ مَنْ يَشَاءُ بِغَيْرِ حِسَابٍ. Allah gives provision to whom He wills without account. So you see that يَرْزُقُ مَنْ يَشَاءُ, Allah gives rizq and provision to whoever He wants. And depending on whatever Allah wants, Allah is Hakim, He's wise. And what does wisdom mean? One of the definitions of hikmah, or a Hakim person, is that he sets things up for their final completion and perfection. He sets everything up to reach perfection. That's what a Hakim person does. So He gives you the amount of rizq that you want, that is good for you. He gives it this much today, 50% or whatever, tomorrow 20%, I don't know, tomorrow 10%, whatever much is good for you, He gives you rizq. So two ways that Allah is teaching us in the Quran not to be fearful people. One is that death is in God's hands. Everybody has an ajal. And wherever you are, you can't run from it. And even if you run from it, or Allah gives you a long life, we break them in their creation. We return them in creation. A child is born without teeth. A child is born basically bald. Same way, when we want to leave this world, people become old, they lose their teeth again, and they lose their hair again. They start looking like babies again. So, keep in mind, if Allah gives you a long life too, inshallah He does, you live many years, but at the end you'll also be very weak. You won't be able to do everything you did when you're young. So we understand these are two ways that God is teaching us that fear is bad, and teaching us that a complete believer, a wali of God, does not have khawf, does not have huzn, does not have grief, does not have fear. Look at some of these traditions. We read in traditions too. So you saw that فَلَا تَخْشَوْهُمْ وَخْشَوْنِي in Surah Baqarah, for example. Do not fear them, Allah says in the Quran, fear me. Over and over you see this thing, not fearing people. Don't fear people. Don't fear this situation. Don't fear this test. Trust in me. I am your Rabb. I am sufficient for you. Am I not sufficient for you? I am your Mawla. You see this theme over and over in the Quran, to have, tatma'innul qulub, that our hearts remember God and will become relaxed, they will become calm, inshallah. This fear, believe, this anxiety, inshallah, believe. This is one of the important lessons of Karbala. 72 against 10,000, and they did it with, very in calmness. They even prayed salat. They did salat with calmness. Imam Hussein alayhi salam, his companions prayed salat. Yes, they're getting martyred and some were taking arrows, but they were talking to God. They were calm. Imam Hussein alayhi salam, they would look at the face of Imam Hussein and there would be more light and light and light. He was a source of encouragement of him for them. He was a source of sabr and patience for his companions. Look at this tradition we have in Man la yahduruhu al-faqih. Man khafa Allah azza wa jal akhafa Allah minhu kull shay. We have a promise, and you see this in hadith many times, that whoever Allah is afraid of a God, whoever has fear of God, God makes everything. Kull shay is, an Arabic word for like everything, absolutely everything. It has, umumiyat, encompasses everything. Everything's going to be afraid of him. Man khafa Allah, akhafa Allah minhu kull shay. If somebody truly fears God, everything is going to fear him. وَمَنْ لَمْ يَخِفِ اللَّهِ عَزَّ وَجَلَ. And whoever is not afraid of God, أَخَافَهُ اللَّهُ مِنْ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ. And whoever isn't afraid of God, then God will make him fear everything. From a rodent to, these are not, let's just stick with rodents. God will make him fear these little rodents and mice and different things. Why? Because we have in our hearts, one of the issues we have is we are built and constructed in a certain way. When you don't go with the program, and the program is the Holy Quran, when you don't go with the teachings of the divine prophets, then you are going to substitute that feeling that you have, that component into you that you have, you're going to substitute it with other things. It's like you can say, for example, inshallah, nobody's fasting right now, it's nighttime, so they have this cup. This cup is going to be filled with something, right? If it's not filled with pure faith, water, and fear of God and hope of God, this heart is not, filled with this, it's going to be filled with other things. It's going to be filled with rodents, fear of mice, fear of death, fear of poverty, anxiety, stress. So that's the problem that we have, is we were built to fear. Yes, we were built to fear. But if that heart is not going to fear the creation, we understand from this, of Creator, and once you fear the Creator, all of creation will fear you, then your heart is going to be full of fear of the creation. And every time you go out, you have a meeting, I'm afraid I'm going to be late. I have a test, I'm afraid I'm going to fail. I don't know, I want to go, propose for marriage, or someone's come, I'm afraid they're not going to like me. I'm afraid of, so you see, when a person it's, psychological too, when you believe and have trust, and that Allah is ni'mal wakil, ni'mal mawla, ni'mal wakil. Allah is the best representative that you could have. Tawakkul, one of the meanings can mean this, that you trust all your affairs to God. You put it like you have an agent, you have a lawyer, you give power of attorney to him, and he takes care of one section of your life. You give everything to God, give wakala to God, and you give him the power of your life. And he's going to take care of you, and that's it. You're going to be calm, not going to have fear anymore. Right? So therefore, we understand that one of the biggest factors that I notice that we still continue to have fear is that, as we see in tradition too, and inshallah we're going to be wrapping it up now, we see in tradition, we don't understand who God is. We don't have ma'rifatullah. We haven't understood our Lord. After all this salat, I'm telling myself, after all this salat, after all this practice of connecting to God, we haven't discovered God. We don't view him as our powerful Lord. We really think sometimes he's powerless. Sometimes you ever have despair, God forbid, that something you do dua and you at the end say, no, God can't even do it. That's despair. That's understanding God with an unfavorable opinion. Brothers and sisters, let's promise ourselves that if we're going to learn something from Imam Hussein alayhi salam, is to have a favorable opinion of God, is to understand God how he is, to understand his might, to understand his wisdom. Sometimes we think, na'udhu billah, God does things by chance. We don't have chance in Islam, you know that, right? We don't have chance. Everything is an ibrah for us. Everything is a lesson for us. Everything is for a purpose. God is Hakim. He is taking everything and maximizing their potential. So when you have a powerful God, 2, you have an all-knowing God, a wise God. 3, you have a compassionate and loving God. From all the surahs, almost all of them start with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, the compassionate God. And why isn't he sufficient for us? I'm telling myself this. Why are we afraid? Why don't we just hand over everything to God? Why don't we understand that he has given us sustenance, he has given us life. So far we have done fine. We're alive, we're breathing. He has given us faith, he has taken care of us. And why will he not take care of us tomorrow? Why will he not take care of our family? Why is it we are so afraid and we don't trust God? Why is it that we don't become courageous like the companions of Imam Hussein? We are not fighting, 72 against 10,000. We just have our own, small little battles, our battles to get an income for our family, our battles to do our salat on time or to do our salat, our battles to not, sin. We have our small battles, but still we are fearing God. So to wrap things up, fear is not something good. Fear is something that, in our hearts, if our hearts are void of the fear of God, vacant of the fear of God, then it's going to be filled with other types of fears. Inshallah, Allah will separate us from all of these fears, inshallah, and make us of the most courageous. That's one of the biggest lessons of Karbala, inshallah. Recite salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Let's talk about some of the champions. Let's talk about some of our heroes in Karbala. Let's talk about some of the greatest warriors, even though at the age of they were old. Imam Hussein alayhi salam, he divided his army into different wings. He had on the right was Zuhair ibn Qayn. On the left, he had Habib ibn Mazahir. In the center, commanding was Abbas. So if you want to understand the 3 main commanders of Imam Hussein's army, it is Habib ibn Mazahir, some say Mazahir, Zuhair ibn Qayn, and Abbas ibn Ali. Habib is who we're going to talk about tonight, this special companion, 75-year-old companion of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, holding on to the left side of the army. MashaAllah, MashaAllah, Habib. Inshallah, you visit Imam Hussein's shrine. The shuhada are all buried in one place. There's one place, it's where the shuhada are. Bani Hashim, Bani Aqil, companions of Imam Hussein, they're all buried together. Except for 2 of the family of Imam Hussein. What is Ali Asghar and Ali Akbar? Ali Asghar, they say, is by the chest of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. And Ali Akbar is in front or by, next to, not in the front, next to Imam Hussein. Then from the companions, we have Hor. Hor is buried a few kilometers. Why? Because of his tribe, they buried Hor farther from him. He commanded about 1,000 people, Hor. And Imam Hussein saw him and he switched sides after having 1,000 people, they say. Some thought that he was afraid and thought that because, why are you afraid of with 1,000 people and 70, you're afraid and you became part of his army? No. either he saw things, some say he saw things, or some say it was just that interaction with Hussein and being ready. And he switched sides. A commander of 1,000 people switched sides and came with Imam Hussein. He was buried farther. Habib ibn Madahir also is a little, maybe a few steps, I don't know, 10 feet, 20 feet, you can say, it's in the men's section in the shrine of Imam Hussein. As I said, alhamdulillah, I had the tawfiq of visiting Karbala a few weeks ago. Remembered you there specifically. I said, I will remember those that I'll speak for. So inshallah, Allah will help our speech and make it more Husseini, And people come and say salam to this great champion of Imam Hussein, Habib ibn Madahir. So he left Kufa, Imam Habib ibn Madahir. He broke there's allegiance. The Kufans have broken their allegiance and to Imam Hussein. So he left Kufa, he joined Imam Hussein alayhi salam. He was one of the memorizers and hufad of the Quran. He's one of the shortatul khamis of Imam Ali alayhi salam. One of the very specific forces, special forces of Imam Ali alayhi salam. He had knowledge of the future. You see, he has this conversation. And there he talks about the fact that he will be martyred and what will happen in Karbala. He knew of this because of the knowledge that Imam Ali alayhi salam had. He was the representative of Muslim ibn Aqil. Some would do allegiance to him, to do allegiance to Muslim ibn Aqil. On the day of Ashura, he would remind people of the hadith of the Holy Prophet. And therefore, he was a person that would spend the night worshipping Allah. Habib went to Kufa with Imam Ali. He fought alongside him. Some say he had the knowledge of ilm al-balaya wal-manaya, the knowledge of calamities and deaths. He says this with the conversation he has with Maitham at-Tammar years before Ashura happens. And when they refuse, he refuses, he's part of the group that they refuse in general to swear allegiance to Yazid. He comes to Imam Hussein's army and joins it on the 7th. There, when he comes, imagine this champion, 75-year-old champion, and he enters, how that makes the children of Imam Hussein alayhi salam feel. How happy they are to see Habib. How happy is Lady Zainab alayhi salam. And they say that the daughter of Imam Ali, through a medium, sends her salams to Habib when he comes. And it says that here he was astonished and so humble, mentioning, who am I that the daughter of Ali sends her salams to me? Who am I? So it is the eve of Ashura. In the eve of Ashura, they informed Habib the concerns of Lady Zainab. She is concerned for tomorrow. She's concerned about the loyalty of the companions of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. So then they go, and Hilal ibn Nafi' and Habib gathered the companions of Imam Hussein. And together they went to Imam Hussein and informed them that they will support the family of the Prophet to the last drop of blood. It's the day of Ashura. It's the day for Habib to show his loyalty, to show that he fears nobody but God, that he is an example of courage, and he is commanding the left army. He is yelling with a loud voice. He is telling the enemy's army that Imam Hussein alayhi salam, he's talking about his lineage. Who are you fighting against? I heard, he says, the narrations that the Prophet saying that these two, Al-Hassan and Hussein, are the masters of the youth of paradise. Who are you fighting against? Or he says, he even said that there are people among you who have heard the narration from the Prophet himself. He says, in this army, there are some of you that heard the Prophet say that Hassan and Hussein are the masters of the youth of paradise. Then Shimr cuts down, the speech, and may all of my worship for God be in doubt and uncertainty if I knew what you were talking about. Yazid, Habib says to Shimr, I swear by God did I see you worship him with 70 doubts and layers of uncertainty. It's the noon of Ashura. Now Abu Thumama reminded Imam of the time of the prayer. Imam told his companions to ask the enemy to stop war so they can pray. But Hussein ibn Numayr said, your prayers won't be accepted by God. Habib answers, you think that the prayer of the Prophet's household will not be accepted? And he tells him, your prayers will not be accepted. You're drunk. Then Habib attacked him. He hits his horse on the face with the sword. He falls to the ground, and his friends come to help him and rescue him from Habib's attack. Then Muslim ibn al-Sajjah covered. He gets hit, Muslim ibn al-Sajjah. He is covering in this companion of Habib. Habib now comes to Muslim ibn al-Sajjah, and then the Imam read the verse of the Quran which says, among the faithful are men who fulfill what they have pledged to Allah. Of them are some who have fulfilled their pledge, and of them are those who still wait, and they have not changed in the least. And Habib told them, your death is very hard for me, Muslim ibn al-Sajjah, but I give you the good news of paradise. Muslim ibn al-Sajjah pointed to Imam Hussein and told Habib this. Habib asks Muslim ibn al-Sajjah, do you have a will? Do you have a will so that I can execute your will for you? What do you think the will of Muslim ibn al-Sajjah was? He points to Imam Hussein, my will is to stay with Imam Hussein alayhi salam. To stay with him and defend him. May God bless you. Keep defending him as long as you're alive, and do not stop supporting him until you are killed. Habib says, I will execute your will and I will make you happy, Muslim. So Habib recites poetry. He goes to attack on the day of Ashura. He says this poetry, I am Habib, my father is Madahir, the fighter of fiery battles and wars. You are superior to us in number and quantity, and we are superior to you in loyalty and steadfastness. Our reason and argumentation is superior and clear, and we are more pious and accepted by God than you. Despite being very old, Habib fought like a hero. He killed 62 people, it says in the Maqtal. Just then, Budayl ibn Maryam Aqfani attacked him and hit him on the head with a sword. Another enemy hit him with a spear, causing him to fall off the horse and down to the ground. Then Budayl ibn Maryam beheaded Habib. Habib had an underage son named Qasim who killed Budayl after he became at the age. Imam Hussein alayhi salam came to him, said, I expect from God the reward of myself and my supported companions. Others say, he said, oh Habib, you were a virtuous person who recited the whole Quran in one night. How hard is it for Imam Hussein alayhi salam to be in front of the body, the slain body, the beheaded body of Habib ibn Bathahib, to see such a pious person, a companion of Imam Ali, a loyal companion of his family, to see him covered and soaked with blood. How hard was it, the sacrifice for Imam Hussein alayhi salam, to lose such pious supporters. وَسَيَعْلَمُ الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا أَيُّ مُنْقَلَبٍ وَسَيَعْلَمُ الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا أَيُّ مُنْقَلَبٍ يَنْقَلِبُونَ إِنَّا لِلَّهِ وَإِنَّا إِلَيْهِ رَاجِعُونَ وَلَا حَوْلَ وَلَا قُوَّةَ إِلَّا بِاللَّهِ الْعَلِيِّ الْعَظِيمِ. Ya Allah, we ask you to give us, inshallah, fearlessness, to give us, inshallah, your fear, so that we can truly fear you, so that on the day of judgment, as we have in this letter from Imam Hussein alayhi salam, we will get protection from God. We do not want protection from just anybody. We want your protection, our Lord. Ya Allah, give protection in your aman, inshallah, to us, our community, inshallah, all our friends, our family members, inshallah. Give protection and give shafa, inshallah, for all those that are sick. Give protection, inshallah, to all those that have passed away. Ya Allah, make us of those that are support, inshallah, for the Imam of the age during his occultation and make us of his companions after you expedite his return, inshallah. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Thank you for joining us. Keep us all in your du'as, keep us all in your prayers. Inshallah, soon we'll be able to have these majalis together, inshallah, in person, inshallah, soon. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil faraj.